Welcome back. Hi everyone. I hope you had good discussions in your breakout room. So we've got just 10 minutes left of the event now. What I'm going to do is we had a few facilitators from Intrac who were in a few of the rooms, and so I'm going to ask them to just feedback briefly about the types of discussions that were happening in those rooms. Please do also keep looking at the Easy Retro board that we've posted the link to. And you can keep posting things there as you hear back from the Intrac facilitators. But I'll go to Paul to hear a couple of insights from your group.
Thanks, Kate. Can you hear me? Is that good? Yeah, I can see nodding. Brilliant. No, we had a really good discussion. There's a good group of us there. Just very quickly, because we haven't got a huge amount of time. Talking about sort of power and what we mean by power. And it's very difficult sometimes to think about what power we talk about in terms of some micro, macro structures of power. We talked about sort of power, some of the earlier discussion in the panel, and actually when it comes to things like learning and that L in MEL, if you like, it feels that that's very much sort of vested at the top in the hierarchy, and it's about sort of feeding into investment and other processes. But actually, it's very difficult to ensure that kind of learning filters down through organisations, but also that it's actually designed by there was a discussion about data and knowledge management systems, and I think that struck people, that conversation from earlier, other systems, and we certainly need to change that and make them more sort of context specific or right for different people. And getting that right, and moving away from things like log frames might be a very good start in helping to shift power. And then just finally, I just wanted to highlight one other point which just struck me that came out of the discussion around sort of tangible versus intangible approaches. So that we need to think more conceptually about these sorts of things, in terms of intangible concepts of values. And I think that struck me about what Frank was talking about, really trying to explore and understand that. And that things like time, particularly with projects that are very time bound, means that people are quite quick to focus on the quick wins related to sort of tangible benefits, rather than thinking about these longer term changes, which I think is very important. And the question about time there. So I'll just stop there, Kate. Thanks very much, and it was a really good, really good discussion.
Thank you, Paul.
In shifting the power, historically and very culturally embedded. When we create more equitable partnerships and monitoring, evaluation and learning tools, there should perhaps be more a drive from the South and like a leadership from the South in terms of developing these tools. And there was a bit of a debate and a discussion around whether we give enough space to do so, and to what extent we can actually shift power when funding is clearly still coming from the global north. How much can we actually progress on this? Financial flow is and will likely remain from the spoke a bit about participatory approaches that they do require also closing the focus on just designing participatory approaches, but then taking information from the community without feeding back towards the end. And what do we do with all the data that is gathered and collected? Many more in the discussion. I want to maybe finish with one question, which was an internal question that we also have at Intrac, like how much are you willing to be uncomfortable about your own position of power, but also how much are we technically able to shift the power without jeopardizing our own very existence as organizations? I think that was a very relevant question put forward in my group discussion. I probably forgot a lot. Please add to the board.
Great, thank you. Alistair?
Thanks, Kate. Yeah, so likewise, we had quite a big group and loads of really good points, but I'll just mention a few. So one was all about intention versus commitment. So see a lot of really good intention from all shift power and work in a more sort of localized way, but the actual commitment sort of lacking in different pressures, so time pressures, organizations end up sort of had what opportunity they had to sort of be involved from the design phase. In the last 7 years, had a huge growth of young people really interested in working in MEL, and he sees this as a really sort of promising opportunity, and engagement with MEL is a sort of shift from traditional sort of mainstream programming work. And finally, Devika mentioned that it's all very good in running these really important conversations, but unless we're also sort of inviting power brokers, donors, and sort of leaders at INGOs to sort of these conversations to be uncomfortable, like Caroline mentioned, the sort of impact is back to you.
We lost Kate, dropped out. In which case, I think it was maybe just one more feedback from one of the groups. Who's still to go? I think that's Alison.
Alison, yeah, me, yeah. Thanks, Paul. So, yeah, we had an interesting discussion in a smallish group, which is great. I think we started with talking about this issue of how to capture the hard to measure intangible things like cultural taboos and norms that are really hard to quantify but also express in the data. So how do you actually measure change in these areas? And we got on to then discussing really, I think, the importance of participatory approaches, qualitative methods that focus on storytelling as being really important ways of understanding what actually does matter to people and what is really changing. Present them towards donors or fundraisers rather than sort of them being really used for people to learn from. I think we also just touched on some methods like outcome harvesting. We talked about a bit more significant change as well, methods that we felt are not necessarily, they're not really silver bullets, but they can solve many of the challenges. They can be owned by people, by the people experiencing the changes. They're qualitative story-based approaches. But I think we, even with using some of these approaches, which we think have potential, there's knowledge, we're just reflecting about what the last group said as well. We think that for these approaches to become more even more recognized value, we need to influence donors and commissioners to recognize, place more value in those approaches than the quantitative data.
Thanks, Alison, and apologies, my internet went down briefly there, but I'm back. Sorry, everyone, we are running a few minutes over. I hope you'll bear with us and hear the last sort of wrapping up I see that a couple of people have posted feedback, and we will be sharing everything later. But I will pass over to Catherine to talk about opportunities and challenges for the sector and key reflections and takeaway from today.
Okay, thank you very much, Kate. I think to start, I need to probably reflect back on the feedback that our trustee Smruti Patel made at our first Shifting the Power event back in March, in which she asked us all to reflect on our own power as an individual before then sort of looking to see how we can then engage with the change process. So I need to say that I'm conscious and very aware of the fact that it's a real privilege to be asked to do this, to do a summing up for this event, but also it's an incredibly difficult job because you've all brought valuable and diverse perspectives to these discussions. We've had a lot of really rich discussion. I will do my best to capture some of the key points. I'm sure I will miss an awful lot, but please sort of do allow me to do my best for you. I guess telling a bit of a story, which is one of the themes that has come through, that monitoring and evaluation is not a recent development. It's been part of our sort of culture and society across the world for a very long time. But we've created a system which has asymmetrical power relations, political, all affecting how we have engaged with monitoring, evaluation, and most critically learning. And that's reflected in a lot of what has come through is obviously the need to challenge those asymmetries, to move away from this idea that it is a north-south transfer of systems, to being much more based on trust and partnership, genuine partnership, and valuing people's perspectives and lived experiences. Even the language that we've created around MEL is excluding many people, the use of acronyms, the language which we used for reporting in our use of technical terms. The observation from Sophie as well, that this has also come through a service delivery lens, where changes democratic, which are much complex, they don't fit neatly into that service delivery perspective. I particularly like Frank's observation that shifting the power is an uncomfortable conversation, and where feeling discomfort is we really think and challenge ourselves on the issues that we to really engage with, to try and move MEL into something that's more valuable. And the main message, I think, for me that has come through out into really legitimize local knowledge and experience, and tie it strongly reason that telling the rest about being accountable to the funder or the organisation that is sort of actively doing the work, and how important it is for us to reflect on the question of who is involved in designing and taking part in the monitoring, evaluation and learning activities, about how that information is used, that information takes, and how better it is to about it, their experiences to that pot of knowledge. Frank was very persuasive that MEL must have a value, that it needed to be both an inclusive tool to promote growth and development within the organisations and individuals who are involved. The values to be sensitive to acknowledge those cultural and spiritual values of the people who are on that change journey. Central, as I say, to creating that change that came through was building trust, the trust between all the different sort of moving parts within the MEL system, the knowledge ecosystem, and that needs also to be us confident and letting go of putting local communities much more central to the process to power in that, so to take that humanist approach. That time and really should be valuing are the perspectives of those communities who are on that journey that we are contributing to, and that is something that that we need to think about how best to bring those stories in, whether that's in the form of the tools that we use to capture them, whether it is through video storytelling, something that is different with different people, expanding our networks, developing relationships, and support tips with people who can draw out those community perspectives, and making sure that we are asking ourselves how we can value perspectives better than we currently are, and also not to be scared of failure. I think learning and listening were two things that came out, and the idea that successes, yes, it's good to understand successes, but in order to really get a better understanding of how we can make a positive difference to support change, it really has to be about acknowledging our role in that process, our biases, to listening to other perspectives and learn to value those perspectives properly. We are all part of the system, so we all have of how other organizations, of how that sort of learning and listening element is being incorporated into MEL. We've looked at how we could promote more horizontal learning, challenge elite capture, the link between MEL and organizational learning and development, trust and relationships, and really challenging ourselves and letting go. I think were for me things that I'll take away from that. As I say, I doubt I've captured everything, but that's the best I can do.
That was great. Thank you, and thank you for everyone. Thank you to everyone, and for all the comments in the chat. We asked you to share your keywords, and so we're just sharing back with you what words came up in terms of how you're feeling today. We've recorded this event, and we will be sharing the video from the event, but also doing a whole series of communications coming out of this. It's a topic that is really important for Interact that we're really thinking about and working on. So this has been helpful just to inform our own thinking, hopefully to take forward some action in different ways. There's some more blogs on our website, on the Interact website, both from people in Interact, but also part of wider work with different angles on Shift through MEL. So I encourage you to look at those as well. And yeah, thank you everyone. Thanks, and we will be sharing with you shortly. Thanks, especially.
Great.
Thank you. Bye-bye.